Thank you very much for that special. I really appreciated that. Our subject this morning, does man have a free will? Our scripture reading is John chapter 6, beginning with verse 37. Let's stand together for the responsive reading. All that the Father giveth me shall come to me, and him that cometh to me I will in no wise cast out.
For I came down from heaven, not to do mine own will, but the will of him that sent me.
And this is the Father's will, which hath sent me, that of all which he hath given me I should lose nothing, but should raise it up again at the last day.
And this is the will of him that sent me, that every one which seeth the Son and believeth on him may and have everlasting life, and I will raise him up at the last day.
The Jews then murmured at him because he said, I am the bread which came down from heaven.
And they said, Is not this Jesus, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know? How is it then that he saith, I came down from heaven?
Jesus therefore answered and said unto them, Murmur not among yourselves.
No man can come to me, except the Father which has sent me draw him, and I will raise him up at the last day.
Thank you. Be seated, please. Our subject, does man have a free will? Someone has said, all knowledge begins with definitions. So I'll give you a couple definitions. One is on free agency, and the other is on free will. What is free agency? Man is a free agent. It is not to be confused with free will. There are two different things. Because of the fall, man lost his ability, that is the will, to obey God. But they're just as responsible to obey God as if they hadn't lost their will. Every person is a free agent because he is not forced from without. God does not force anybody. And he does not have a free will toward God. Every individual is bound from within and can only act according to his own depraved nature. Free agency is the power to decide according to one's character or nature. Man must be a free agent to be accountable to God. Man is a free agent, but he cannot originate the love of God in his heart. His will is free in the sense it is not controlled by any force outside himself. As a bird with a broken wing is free to fly, but it cannot fly. As a broken wing keeps the bird from flying, so the natural man is free to come to God, but he's not able. He does not have a free will. Now let me explain free will. One cannot attribute moral agency to man. Martin Luther, said free will is an empty term whose reality is lost. And a lost liberty, according to the grammar, is no liberty at all. Free will is the power to change one's character by volition or by choice. No person since the time of Adam has had a free will. Only in conversion is our will free. The Calvinist believes that man is free to choose and act in accordance with his nature. That's the reason God gave us a new nature. Since we act according to our nature, we needed a new nature because the nature we had was depraved. It was unacceptable to God. It forced us to do evil. It was a bad nature. We inherited it from Adam. When Adam sinned against God, he died. His will died to God. And any inclination toward God was lost to Adam. So man needs a new nature. That's why Jesus said to Nicodemus, except a man be born again, he cannot see nor enter the kingdom of God. He has to be born again. He has to have a new nature. And Jesus used the lesson of two trees to explain that. He said in Matthew 7:17, even so, every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Every tree has its own nature. It's the nature of the tree, not the choice of the tree. The sinner produces according to his nature. Since he has a depraved nature, he lives a depraved life. He has a depraved thinking. Everything about him is depraved. Why does a cat chase a mouse? It's the nature of a cat to chase a mouse. Man follows his own nature, which is depraved and sinful. Then also consider the wind. Jesus said in John 3, verse 6, that which is born of the flesh is flesh, and that which is born of the Spirit is spirit. Marvel not that I said unto thee, ye must be born again. For the wind bloweth where it listeth, and thou hearest the sound thereof, but canst not tell whence it cometh, and whither it goeth. So is everyone that is born of the Spirit. Can free will cause the wind to blow? No. Your will cannot cause the wind to blow. The wind is usually spoken of as the Spirit of God. He is called fire, he is called wind. There are many, many appellations describing the work of the Spirit of God, and one of them is wind. So if man had a free will, he should be able to make the wind blow at whim, but he cannot. Free will is limited. It cannot operate as a free will. False reasoning of free will, to assume that man has the ability to love, and therefore has the ability to love God, is an error. Because water has the ability to flow, but it doesn't have the ability to flow uphill. Man has the ability to love that which his nature loves, but he doesn't have the ability to love God. Because when Adam sinned, Adam's will died. His will as to spiritual matters. I'm not speaking about normal physical matters. It is true, a man can get up in the morning, he can go to work, he can eat his breakfast, he can decide to read something. There are many things that a man can do, but they're all in the realm of death. They're all in the realm of the depraved nature. An unsaved man has no love for the Bible. He has no love for the church. He has no love for the preacher. He has no love for other Christians. He has no inclination in that direction. If you don't believe it, just go talk to people that are unsaved and see what they say to you. They say, I'm not interested in that, or I have my own religion, or I don't want to hear it. That's because their will is depraved and in bondage to sin. And they cannot do what they ought to do. They cannot. It's an impossibility. Man might have the power to cast himself off the top of a mountain. But as he's falling down, if he changes his mind, he doesn't have the power to reverse his direction and go back up to the top. He's going to hit the bottom. He cannot change his direction. And a sinner cannot change his direction. He is moving in the direction of sin, and he cannot change it by himself. He has no power to do that. He cannot will to do it. His will is captive to Satan and sin. For example, a man might put a little goldfish in a bowl, and that little goldfish could swim around in that bowl, and that little goldfish could say, I'm free, I'm free, I'm free. But is he? No. He's only free to swim around in that goldfish bowl. And he may not know it, but his master may pick up the goldfish bowl and take it out and put it in another room. He is not free. He cannot do what he is supposed to do because he does not have a will that's free in spiritual matters. He can make decisions, momentous decisions. He can make decisions politically. He can make decisions about various things. But when it comes to spiritual matters, he has no inclination whatsoever for spiritual things. He doesn't want the preacher. He doesn't want the church. He doesn't want the Bible. He doesn't want to be told anything about the Bible. He doesn't want to hear about heaven. He doesn't want to hear about hell. He has no inclination towards spiritual matters. That's because he does not have a free will. Sure, he can get up in the morning and decide to go to work. He can get up and decide to eat breakfast. But he cannot decide to love God. He cannot decide to read the Bible. He cannot decide to go to church. He doesn't want any of that. Because his will is depraved. And he needs a new nature because he will act according to his nature. Just as a cat acts according to its nature and chases a mouse, man acts according to his depraved nature and he practices depravity. How much freedom does the will of a lost man have? About as much freedom as a bug in a bottle. A bug in a bottle can crawl around, but he can't go anywhere. That's about how much free will man has in spiritual matters. And that's all we're concerned about this morning is spiritual matters. Adam was created in a state of uprightness. He was a good man. He had a good soul. He had an antinomy toward God. He loved God. And the Bible says God hath made man upright, but they have sought out many inventions. So Adam was created in a state of uprightness. He was right, upright. He did right until the day that he fell. He was not created in a state of indifference. Some people preach that Adam was created with a will that can go either direction, and he just chose the wrong direction. Well, that's only a half-truth. Man is not created in a state of indifference. Man today is created in a state of depravity. So he only follows his own depraved nature. The whoremonger, the harlot, the prostitute, the drunkard, the thief, the immoral, those follow their own nature. And until God gives them a new nature, they will follow their old nature, the depraved nature. And that's understandable because they can't do otherwise. Adam was created with an inclination toward God. He looked forward to God coming to visit him day by day. And he was always glad when God came to the garden to visit him and Eve. But the day he sinned, deliberately chose to disobey God, his will died as to spiritual matters. He couldn't think about God. He couldn't love God. His spiritual will was dead. And it is still dead today. The Bible says, and you hath he quickened, that means made alive, who were dead in trespasses and in sins. I spent 21 years as a dead man, spiritually dead. I was alive physically, but I was dead spiritually. I had a depraved nature, and I followed my nature, just as every sinner does. But one night, God gave me a new nature, and now I follow that new nature that He gave me, and that new nature is Christ in me, the hope of glory. Adam was not blindsided by the devil. he deliberately turned away from God. Because when Satan showed Eve the tree of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, she lusted for it, and she ate of it, although God had forbidden them not to touch it, not to eat of it, rather. And she fell. And Adam chose to fall with her, to remain with her in his lost condition. Now, the soul of a man is created with three faculties. And everybody has these three. The first faculty is knowledge. You have knowledge. You've been to school. You've studied. You know certain things. You have some knowledge. The second faculty of the soul is affection. You have affection for some things. But if you're unsaved, you have an affection for the wrong things. And the third faculty of the will, of the soul, is the will. So knowledge, affection, and will. Those three things make up the soul of a man. Eve verifies this order because she gained knowledge of the fruit when she saw it. Her affection went out to the fruit when she desired it and took it. And thirdly, she exercised her will by taking the fruit and eating of it. So she exercised those three faculties of the will. And when she did that, she died as God said she would. He said, "In the day thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die." Surely means there's no question about it. Die means to die spiritually and physically. Now, she didn't die physically until many years later. But she died spiritually the moment she ate of that tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Adam lost his inclination for God when he ate of the fruit of the tree also. He had an inclination from that moment on toward sin. You paint a balcony wall that people hold on to when they go up and down the steps. And you put that fresh paint on there, and you put a sign, "Fresh paint, do not touch." What happens? Everybody touches it. Because they have an inclination to disobey that order, do not touch. God said to Adam, "Do not eat of that tree." And what did Adam do? He ate of that tree. What do sinners do today? God says, "Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this." And He gave 10 commandments. Don't do these things. And what do? We do them. And when we do them, we see something approaching. That's judgment. Adam's fall has been compared to a 3-story building. The top building is his spirit. The second floor is his soul. The third floor is his body. And the first effect of the fall was his mind, his spirit. His emotions were influenced. And the top story fell into the second story, and they both fell into the basement. That was the fall of man. The soul of an individual is a triune soul. He is created in the image of God. God is a threefold being, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Man is created in God's image. Man is a trinity also. Man has an intellect. That's the power of knowing. He has affections. That's the power of feeling. He has a will. That's the power of choosing. But that will died in the Garden of Eden. Adam lost it. And he lost it not only for himself, but he lost it for all of humankind. And because of Adam's disobedience, I came into this world dead spiritually in trespasses and sins, and you did too. But I'm so grateful that grace brought a new nature to my life and to my heart and to my soul. A new experience took over in my life. An inclination to pray, an inclination to read the Bible, an inclination to trust God and to serve Him. What changed? God changed me. I didn't change myself. And you can't change yourself. It's impossible. You don't have a free will. And to come to God, you have to come to Him in your will. And you can't come to Him in your will because you don't have a will that's free to come to Him. You have a will that does not want God. So in order for you to be saved, your will has to want God. You have to incline your heart toward the Lord, and you can't do it. You say, well, I could if I wanted to. You can't do it. You can't. God says you can't. So the will is influenced by what it heard. The affection is affected by understanding, and the will is influenced by volition. Now, predestination, that is God's working things out according to His own will. Predestination and free agency are the two twin pillars of a great temple. They both meet up in heaven, and we cannot see the meeting of the two in heaven where the clouds of men cannot penetrate, but they do meet. Predestination and free agency are parallel lines. The Calvinists may not be able to make them unite, but the Arminian cannot make them cross each other either. We have an illustration in the life of Joseph. Joseph's depraved brothers sold him into slavery. And in God's predestinating purposes, he rose to become the prime minister of Egypt. But that didn't lessen the guilt of these brothers. Divine sovereignty and human freedom cooperate in perfect harmony. Man does what man wants to do, and God takes what man wants to do and turns it around and makes it what He wants man to do. So God was in Joseph being sold into Egypt, and yet He held the brothers accountable for selling Joseph. You say, well, logically, that doesn't make sense to me. Forget about logically. God said it, that makes it so. God sets the standard. He tells us what is right and what is wrong. He does not leave it up to us. When I look at my beloved country of America, I see something wrong with standards. I see men and women thinking backwards, thinking upside down, thinking depraved. And I wonder what is happening to my country. It is because they are unsaved. It is because they cannot straighten themselves out. The only thing that will ever save America is a revival from God that would change the hearts of the people so they could think straight and think rationally and do what's right. Divine sovereignty and human freedom are made to work together, although not with the will of man. There's a song. It's called the Hornet Song. I don't know if you've ever heard the Hornet Song. It goes like this. It pictures man's responsibility and God's sovereignty. When the Canaanites hardened their hearts against God and grieved Him because of their sin, God sent along hornets to bring them to terms. and to help his own people to win. If a nest of live hornets were brought into this room and the creatures allowed to go free, you would not need urging to make yourself scarce. You would want to get out, don't you see? They would not lay hold and by force of their strength throw you out the window. Oh no. They would not compel you to go against your will, but they would just make you willing to go. When Jonah was sent to the work of the Lord, the outlook was not very bright. He never had done such a hard thing before, so he backed off and ran from the fight. Now the Lord sent a great fish to swallow him up. The story I am sure you all know. God did not compel him to go against his will, but he just made him willing to go. God does not compel us to go, oh no. He never compels us to go. God does not compel us to go against our will, but he just makes us willing to go. That's how it works. God has to change the will. God has to regenerate the will. God has to make the will willing and inclining itself toward God. Now man is recalcitrant. He is stubborn. He is like the wild ass's colt. He is stubborn, and Jesus said in John 5:40, ye will not come to me that you might have life. See, he will not come until something happens to him. And that something is described in Psalm 110 and verse 3. Thy people shall be willing in the day of thy power. In the day that God exerts his power of grace upon an individual, he becomes willing. I recall well how unwilling I was to let a preacher enter my home. I recall how I did not let people talk to me about the Lord. I remember how depraved I was. But somehow, one night, as I heard the gospel preached, how that Christ died for sinners and rose again, my will was changed. Changed into a free will. And I gladly inclined my heart toward what I was hearing. God changed my will. And until he changes the will, no man can be saved. No man can do the will of God until God changes his will. Man is also without knowledge. But the natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God. They are foolishness unto him, neither can he know them, for they are spiritually discerned. Spiritually discerned. In other words, you understand them by the Spirit of God who indwells your heart, who has changed your will. Ephesians 4:17, this I say therefore and testify in the Lord, that you henceforth walk not as other Gentiles walk in the vanity of their mind. That's the emptiness of their mind. I look at the television set, the internet, and I see the emptiness of the minds of the teenagers and the young people out rioting, tearing down buildings. They don't have spiritual discernment. They can't know. In the vanity of their mind, having the understanding darkened, being alienated from the life of God through the ignorance that is in them, because of the blindness of their heart. But, as it is written, eye hath not seen, nor ear heard, neither hath entered into the heart of man the things which God hath prepared for them that love him. But God hath revealed them unto us by his Spirit. For the Spirit searcheth all things, yea, the deep things of God. All things are delivered unto me of my Father, Jesus said, and no man knoweth the Son but the Father. Neither knoweth any man the Father save the Son, and he to whomsoever the Son will reveal him. We are lost to understand how one can take the plain common sense of the Scriptures and not understand them. They are blind. They don't know it. They are dead. They don't know it. Spiritually, they don't understand it. Now we ask the question, what then causes men to come to God? Why do some come and others do not? Psalm 65 and verse 4 has the answer to that question. Blessed is the man whom thou choosest and causest to approach unto thee, that he may dwell in thy courts. Notice the word causest. Blessed is the man, the sinner, whom God chooses in electing grace and causes to approach unto thee. You cannot approach God without the Spirit of God. You can't do it on your own. You can't decide to do it yourself. But the Spirit of God can take hold of you and He can draw you to Christ. And that's how every person is saved that's ever been saved. The Spirit of God lays hold of the mind and the will of that sinner. He's lost and undone and dead in trespasses and sins, and the Spirit of God lays hold of him and draws him to Christ. And he comes willingly. He comes gladly, because something has changed inside. His will has changed. His affections has changed. His understanding has changed. He's a new creature in Christ. He's born again. And I have seen people walk down the aisle year after year after year, down through the years. I've seen them come with tears in their eyes, saying, "Preacher, I come for salvation. I've come trusting Christ." And I know that God saved them back there in their seat before they ever got out of the seat and came down to the front. He does the saving. God is the cause of man's coming to God. Further scripture proof is Proverbs 16:9. A man's heart deviseth his way, but Jehovah directeth his steps. See, the Bible says that God directs the steps of a convert. Jeremiah 10:23. O Jehovah, I know that the way of man is not in himself. It is not in man that walketh to direct his steps. Jeremiah 10:23. What then brings us to God? Free will, which we don't have, or God's will? God's will brings us to Christ. James 1:18. Of His own will, not our will, begat He us with the word of truth, that we should be a kind of first fruits of His creatures. See, of His own will, not of our own will. Ephesians 1:5, having predestinated us unto the adoption of children by Jesus Christ, to Himself, according to the good pleasure of His will. Of His will. Man says, "Oh, I came of my own will." Well, then you didn't come. You might have come walking down the aisle. You might have made a profession of faith. But if you didn't come of His will, drawn by His Spirit, then you didn't come. According to the purpose of Him who worketh all things after the counsel of His own will. Ephesians 1:11. Again, Philippians 2:13. For it is God which worketh in you both to will and to do of His good pleasure. Why do you do God's good pleasure as a Christian? Because it is God which works in you both to will. Notice that, both to will. He does the willing. He changes your heart so it becomes willing. God gives the will. And then thirdly, it is impossible for man to come to God unless the Spirit draws him. John 6:44. No man can come to me, Jesus said, except the Father which has sent me draw him. and I will raise him up at the last day. Now Jesus said, no man can. He didn't say, no man should. He said, no man can come to me, except the Father draws him. The Spirit draws him. That word can, C-A-N. Jesus said, no man can. John 6:44. There's a difference between may and can. When I was a boy, I went to a one-room schoolhouse. I learned to read and write, which most of them don't do today. And you didn't get out of your seat without permission. If you want to get out of your seat to go to the bathroom or something, you raised your hand. And when you got permission, then you could state what you wanted to do and you could go do that. So I broke the lead on my pencil. And I wanted to go sharpen my pencil, so I raised my hand. Yes, Jack, what is it? Teacher, may I go sharpen my pencil? No answer. She just looked down at her papers. I sat there a minute and I thought, this is strange. I raised my hand again. She said, yes, Jack, what is it? I said, can I go sharpen my pencil? She looked down and didn't answer me. I thought, well, what am I going to do? I can't finish this lesson. She'll give me an F. I got to finish this lesson. I can't do it without my pencil. What am I going to do? I raised my hand the third time. She said, Jack, what is it? I said, can I please go sharpen my pencil? She said, Jack, I don't know if you can or not. But if you're asking permission, you may. You may. Then I knew the difference that day between may and can. As long as I used the word can, I was asking her if I had the ability. But when she said, you may, that means I have permission. Now God says to the sinner, you may come if you can. And you can if He draws you. If He doesn't draw you, you can't. And you have no excuse for not coming to Him because He commands you to come to Him. And you can't obey that command because your will is still held bondage and in depravity. So He has to break those chains so that you can come to Him. Those chains will keep you from Him. He has to break them. John 6:65, therefore said I unto you, no man can come unto me except be given unto my Father. Twice He says that. No man can. Man does not have free will. He can't. I read a story one time about a preacher that wanted to go down to an ice house and buy a big 50-pound chunk of ice. You know, in those days they didn't have refrigerators, so you went and bought ice. And you put it on the bumper of the car, and you took it home and put it in an ice box. And so he went with his little girl, little 5-year-old daughter, and they went and got this 50-pound chunk of ice, and people set it on the fender, and they drove home. And he got out of the car, started to pick it up, and she said, Daddy, I want to do it. Let me do it. He said, no, dear, it's too heavy for you. She said, I want to do it. He said, all right, honey, you go right ahead and do it. And she got a hold of it. She looked up at him and said, Daddy, I can't do it. I can't do it. He said, you know what I did to her? I shut her mouth. That's what the law does. It shuts our mouth. And we say to God, I can't do it. I can't do it. If I'm to be saved, you have to save me. I can't do it. As long as you hold on to your free will and think you can do it, nothing will ever happen to you. The new birth is not man's doing, it's God's doing. John 1:13, which were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. Not of the will of man. God says it so plainly here. Which were born again, not of blood, that is royalty, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man. God said it. You can't do it. Romans 9:16. So then it is not of him that willeth. Romans 9:16. If you forget everything else, remember Romans 9:16. It is not of him that willeth, nor of him that runneth, but of God that showeth mercy. That's how you say it. When Jonah came out of the belly of the whale, what did he cry? Salvation is of the Lord. Jonah knew it was the Lord that delivered him from the whale. The new birth is the work of the Holy Spirit, unobserved, unseen. He quietly works in the heart, changes the will and the mind, and makes a new creation out of an individual. And then he calls that individual to come to Jesus and believe on Jesus and be born again. There are 5 errors of free will, and I won't have time to mention them. Free will leads to a denial of the cross. Free will says then that salvation would be a possibility but not a guarantee. Free will would mean that Christ's sacrifice would not actually save anybody, would not pay anybody's debt. Free will would put salvation in the hands of man, not of God. Free willers deny the Bible teaching that the will is in bondage to sin. You ought to read Martin Luther's great book, The Bondage of the Will. He said himself it was the greatest revelation God ever gave him, and the greatest book he ever wrote was The Bondage of the Will. Luther came to see that he couldn't save himself by climbing the steps, 39 steps, trying to find favor with God, trying to be saved by works. He couldn't do it. And he wrote The Bondage of the Will, how his will was in bondage, and how Christ set his will free so he could then come to Christ. And then last of all, it's a denial of the fall of Adam. And it's a denial of God's glory. When a man says, I have a free will, I am the captain of my soul, I'm the master of my faith. When he says that, he steals God's glory. And he will never know God until he says, like that little girl, I just can't do it. You can't, but God can. And if you have an inclination in your heart toward spiritual things, toward God, toward the Bible, that means God has done a work of grace in your heart. God has done something in you, and that will lead you on to Christ and to salvation. Does man have a free will? God says no, he does not. I'll take God's word for it. Even though most of the world believes that it has a free will, God says no, you don't. Let's stand together and be dismissed, please, in prayer. If you're here today and you've never trusted Christ, believe on the Lord Jesus Christ and thou shalt be saved. And if you can believe, he will save you. And he will give you the belief if you have the inclination toward him. Let's bow together and be dismissed in prayer. Brother Jim, would you dismiss us, please?
Thank you.
Just a minute, just a minute. Would you pass these out, Jim? I have a book here. I want all of you, all these adults, give all these adults this book. I'd like for you to take this little book home and read it. It says better than I could say what I was trying to preach this morning.
Sure.
Please take it home and read it. It could be the means of saving your life.